Hello everyone. The topic of today's video is whether or not Mary, the mother of Jesus, was sinless. As in, had she ever sinned, and did she remain in either state? A state of normal human being or sinless state. Alright, so the line here with Mary, the mother of Jesus, Miriam, is a line between denigration and veneration. So it's neither one or the other that it should be, but you will usually find, at least in my experience, something close to one or definitely the other. So veneration is what the Roman Catholic Church does, for instance, and then denigration is what someone who is very disrespectful would be doing, something like that. All right, so the most commonly quoted verse to do with this is that all have sinned, and all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. So does that apply to babies? All of sin means that everyone has sinned, right? To say that it includes infants and aborted babies, can I say that word? As well as young children who just don't know right from wrong, as well as they will. That's disingenuous. Obviously, that's not the case. So if you have a baby who doesn't make it out of the womb, they are sinless, of course, and that's biblical as well. Now Hebrews 9:27 says all as well. It says that is appointed for a man to die once and then the judgment. So all men to die once and then the judgment. This is an example of a rule of creation, whereas Lazarus and others were raised from the dead, right? They died twice in their earthly form. So there are rules of creation that it's safe to say all. It's safe to say once to die and then the judgment, because it's clear what you mean. So when you take these verses and you try to twist them, it becomes something else. Another example is in Psalms, Psalm 145:21, where it says, "Every knee will bow and adoringly bless his name." Adoringly bless his name. That is not going to be everyone. But at some point, it will be everyone. Everyone left will bow their knees and adoringly bless Jehovah. So these are things, right, to where you might say there are exceptions to the rule. This is where they usually go with this one. People who are of the idea Mary was sinless. Oh, so you're saying it could have happened, right? There's a chance. Gotcha. So some people didn't even experience death the way that we understand it. They just were like transmuted to heaven, or however you want to say that. So like Elisha and Enoch, anyway, they were brought straight to heaven. So they didn't experience death the way that we understand it. And so another exception to Hebrews, right? Now some people, they use quotes best used to do with the second death. Now, these have to do with death that comes after the judgment. So, anyway, we'll get back onto it. So, Mary, the mother of Jesus, to be made sinless, according to the reading, is not possible. It is not a biblical thing, the idea of the mother of Jesus being sinless. It is not. It is something that it's developed later on. It was not something that was practiced by the early church, so far as we can tell, although Roman Catholics might tell you differently, they might not. It is definitely a church tradition of the Roman Catholics who dogmatized it in like the 1800s or something, way after Jesus' time, obviously. So reading into the text, right? This is something we see denominations do all the time. It's something that none of them are able to say that they don't do, because they all do. And they're very eager to point out each other and how each one will read into the text something that is not there, or make up a tradition that goes against the Word of God, right? Or the earliest church. So they're all guilty of this. And insofar as I find things where I have a misconception, it becomes something for me that I need to remove from my own thought process and change, which is what we should be doing. As we learn better, we change. All right, now to make somebody sinless, to make someone sinless would be almost to take away their mortality, right? And I think this is where they end up going with this kind of thing. I don't want to put words in someone's mouth, but what makes us human is that we are fallible, that we are mortal, that we're sinful. And only with God's help can we work our way out of these things. Not in this life, but we get there, right? Eventually. So we're flawed creatures. And to say that one of us could be sinless is, it's a bit silly. It'd be almost like making yourself equal to God in that way. Which again, they're going somewhere with this. Okay. And there are those who say, could she not have been the perfect sacrifice if she was sinless? Right? Answer me that. Well, anyhow, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the mother of Jesus having been a very righteous woman, perhaps the most righteous woman, who was imperfect. Okay, there's no need for her to be sinless. It's just unnecessary. Now, Jesus loved his earthly mother very much, and he loved her prior to coming to earth. He loved her while he was living among us, and he continues to love her now, in eternity. He loved her so much, he loves her so much, that he picked her out of everyone else to birth him into the world. That's amazing. Now, I don't think there's anything we could say. There are no words for how incredible that is, right? And so although there are verses given to reinforce the idea of her sinlessness at times, it is not scriptural, and it's commonly accepted as having been developed as a church tradition and not as a biblical fact. Okay, so there is no proof in the Bible for being sinless. There really is not much of anything in the Bible about her being sinless. Okay, it just isn't there, not remotely. And for those that try to tie in certain obscure verses, you are reaching. You are really reaching. And they had nothing to do with Mary at all. So the need for Catholics, Roman Catholics, to claim that Mary was sinless came from other church traditions which developed into a requirement of her being sinless. So they were saying that God could not be birthed into the world through a sinful woman. Right? This was a thought that they had, and then they ran with it, unfortunately. But part of Jesus being fully man means that he was birthed into the world through a woman who was fully woman. Do you see where I'm going with this? So no mortal being can be perfect. Only God is perfect. Only God is infallible. Only God is immortal. That's why he brings us closer to him. He's better than we are. Now, we want to be sinless. We want to be holy. But we don't manage that. And if you want to say something strange about how retroactively she was made sinless or things like this, even more of a reach. Let's be honest with ourselves here. Okay, now this might be TMI, but full disclosure, Catholics in the late hundreds believed that the blood of the mother of a baby, any baby, mingled with the blood of the infant in the womb. This was what they thought, and we know today that this is not the case. Look it up if you don't believe me, it's not the case. So that's one large reason why they innovated their beliefs into that of her being sinless. A lot of people today don't realize this either. I mean, who could blame them? There's a person's body inside a person's body, and you're going to tell me that they're not... No. The blood of the mother and the child don't mix. Isn't that crazy? I wouldn't have known that. Okay, now, on the other side of the coin, after bashing Roman Catholics for the last 10 minutes, Protestants absolutely do denigrate Miriam, the mother of Jesus. They say the most horrible things, and people outside of the Christian church obviously say much worse. That's very wrong, and I hold them to account for that when they're claiming to be Christian, but it's not me they have to hold themselves to account to. God will hold them accountable, ultimately. Anyway, going back to bashing Roman Catholics about this one, elevating her to the point of worship, and I do mean worship, absolutely I do mean that. This is why, for example, the Muslims, the Islamists, the Mohammedans, were confused about the Trinity. They thought it was God the Father, God the Son, and God, Jesus' mother. They thought Mary was part of the Trinity. And when you read their texts, we see this very plainly. And so it's used to mock them now. Oh, well, look at your sacred texts getting this wrong. Well, it's because they saw Roman Catholics worshiping Mary. And that is what that is. Anyhow, so Mary was not the perfect sacrifice prophesied in the Old Testament. She was not. That's only Jesus. She was not the fulfillment of the law. And although she must have, at some point in her life, been imperfect, at some point she must have sinned, she was not a sinful woman. And so to say one is not to say the other. She was absolutely a very, very righteous woman. Perhaps the most righteous woman ever to ever be, and that ever would be. And that makes sense to me in a way. So there is nothing wrong with Mary being an incredibly righteous woman who was imperfect. Part of being human is to be imperfect. And she would have been no exception to being human. So, could God have made her sinless? Yes, absolutely, of course. God can do anything. Such as being born out of a sinful body, for instance. He could do that. Now, did God make Mary sinless? Probably not. No, I don't think so. And it's not biblical. It's not founded in anything except for tradition that formed later on out of a lack of understanding of biology, as well as the development of certain aspects of church tradition, which sort of forced the point on them to make it like, well, we kind of have to have her be sinless because of everything else that we've said. And I know that sounds horrible, but I think that's true. I'm open to correction, but I don't think that's going to be anything that's going to be able to be proven otherwise. And so when you look at these things, when you research them, we look first always to the Bible, and we see that it is not there, and it is not supported. So now, did God make Mary sinless and ascend her into the third heaven to be with him after Jesus ascended, for instance? No, not according to the Bible. These claims are being read into the text because they are not there. It also doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. God clearly loved her, and he loves her immensely. That's what matters. And no one's salvation is going to be reliant on whether or not Mary was sinless. Okay, that's all for this one.